Welcome back to the Noble Pursuit podcast. I'm your host, Landry Coleman. For a lot of men, becoming a dad brings excitement and uncertainty. We want to be the dads our kids need, but many of us are still carrying around the wounds from our own childhood. So the question becomes, how do we break unhealthy cycles and become the men and fathers God has called us to be? Today's guest is Jerrad Lopes. He's the founder of Dad Tired, which is a ministry focused on helping men lead their families and pursue biblical fatherhood. Through his books and podcasts, Jerrad has encouraged thousands of dads to be more intentional. In this conversation, we talk about growing up without a dad in the home, how to overcome the wounds and baggage we carry into adulthood, and what it looks like to be intentional with our kids. Here's my conversation with Jerrad. All right, Jerrad, thank you so much for joining the Noble Pursuit podcast. If you would, can you just give me a little bit of information about yourself in your own words and kind of tell the audience about who you are?
Yeah, man. Well, it's super great to be here. I appreciate the invite. First and foremost, I'm a son of Christ, adopted into the family of God. I say that not to be cheesy or churchy right off the bat, but really to remind myself that that's the truest identity about me, and I have to do that daily because I try to find my identity in all kinds of other places. It turns out, so I'm adopted son of God. I'm also a husband. I've been married to my wife Layla for 16 years, and I have four kids. We have four kids together. From 15 years old, just this last week, all the way my 15-year-old son, and then I have three daughters from 12 years old, 7 and 5. Too many to remember all
I
their
have to do that
birthdays.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I run this podcast called Dad Tired, and we're just trying to help guys figure out what it looks like for them to find their own healing, so they can be the men God's called them to be in their families, their workplaces, with their kids, marriage, all that good stuff. So that's me.
All right. And, one of the other things that you've done, you've written a book, and I was kind of telling you beforehand that I've read it a bunch of times. And one of the things that you talk about in your book is like growing up without a dad in your own house. So I was just curious, how do you think that impacted you and the type of father that you are now?
Well, I would say, dude, like, probably up until my mid to late 20s, I knew that it probably impacted me, but I didn't know specifically how it impacted me. And so people would ask me that question, like, your dad leaving. My dad left when I was 3, so they're like, how has that impacted you? And I'm like, I don't know. That's all I've known. It's like, it's hard to make some kind of contrast because it's literally all I've known since I was 3 years old. I've been raised by women, my mom, my sisters, and all the women in my life. Every dude in my family has bailed, uncles, grandpas, everyone. So I was raised by a bunch of women, and I didn't really know like how that impacted me. And probably, if I were totally honest, I would say it didn't really like. It's not. It probably sucked, but it's not really like impacting the way I'm a dad and a husband now. And now, that I'm in my late 30s, which is weird to say, I've gone through some really deep, intensive counseling. I've been hurt. I've been really depressed. I've been addicted. I've like felt all the things that a man can feel at some really dark levels. And I realized my dad's absence probably touched all of those areas or had an impact on all those areas. And at the root of it, it's really feeling like I don't know what it's like to be fully loved, fully known, or I should say, fully known, fully loved, and fully delighted in, which I think is what kids are supposed to feel. Like, I want my kids to be like, my dad knows everything about me and he loves me fully and he really likes me. And I think if a kid can feel that, they have some kind of security and foundation. And if they don't feel that, then they'll go into the world looking for it. I mean, we all have that as humans. We all have that desire. Like, I really want, whether can articulate it or not, I really want to be known. I really want to be loved. I really want to be delighted in. And so we'll search for that in all kinds of places: work, sports, academics, um, achievements, all kinds of money, like women, whatever we can do to like find value. And it turns out that's a pretty exhausting pursuit. And I've spent most of my life doing that.
Did you feel like as you like look back on it now that it had any kind of impact on your relationship with God as well? Because I think for me, like the thing I always struggled with was like seeing God as a good father. I was like, what does that even mean? And like that was a hang up for me for such a long time. And it wasn't until I had my own kids, that kind of helped me in that healing process. So did you feel anything similar?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of guys who didn't grow up with a dad talk about that, like that feeling. For me, I felt like I've always trusted that God was a good father. What that did for me was it brought a lot of shame because I felt like not a good son. So I was like, he's a good father, but I'm a really bad son. And so he probably is disappointed with me in some ways. He's probably really mad at me. And, or like he loves us because he's supposed to love us. Like like we know as dads, we're supposed to love our kids, but he doesn't like me. He wouldn't like choose to be around me. These are all kind of subtle thoughts. I don't know if I ever like thought them explicitly and consciously, but I think in my core, I kind of felt that. And that just breeds a ton of shame for me because it feels like, well, if I have to perform a certain way to get people like me, which is how the lie I believe my whole life, I have to be a certain kind of person in order to be liked, valuable, to have worth in this world. And I just kind of transferred that onto God. I have to be certain kind of way for God to like me. It just bred a ton of shame in me, which led to like depression and nobody feeling like nobody really knows me and all those terrible things.
So I know you talked a little bit about therapy. Was that like the first step in the healing process, or was there something else that you did to kind of overcome that?
Um, yeah, I mean, therapy was really helpful for me. So I hit a breaking point coming up on 2 years ago where I was, I'm writing books and I'm on radio shows and I'm hanging out with really well known people and I'm doing all these things that on the outside looked like it was really successful. And for me, I was trying to accomplish as much as I could so that I felt worthy. Like, look at if I can accomplish a lot of things, then I can convince myself, oh, I'm not so bad. I got my life together. Even though internally I'm like, I'm really sad, I'm really depressed, I'm really angry at times. I'm feeling really terrible, but I'll just like kind of mask it with all these accomplishments. And there was one night where this kind of breeds over years and years and years where I'm traveling and I'm speaking and alone in a hotel room. And I had really become convinced, like to my core, that the world would be better without me. My kids would be better without me. My wife would be better without me. I mean, I just really believe like, um, if anyone really knew who I was deep down, nobody would actually love me. I'm not nearly as impressive as I look on the outside. And so you can imagine, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but you can imagine like where that thought leads as you're alone in a hotel room and that you've had this kind of thinking for years. And so I called out of complete desperation, lowest moment of my life, darkest moment of my life. I called a mentor and was just like, dude, I'm alone in a hotel room now. I'm spiraling. I'm thinking some really terrible thoughts. And I have everything I need to like end my life right now. And so he said, let's get you help immediately. And I pretty much immediately went from that to a 2-week intensive counseling, like, program. And sorry for rambling here, but I'm trying to give some
Yeah.
context,
Yeah.
to your question. So anyway, I'm at this 2-week program. I'm with 9 other strangers, 9 other guys that I had never met before. I don't know. We have no cell phones. We have no access to the outside world. We start therapy at 6 a.m. and we end at 10 p.m. every day. And you're just confessing. You're not allowed to talk about work or politics. You're not allowed to talk about any of your accomplishments. And so for 10 days or for 14 days, I'm just confessing sin. I'm confessing all like the worst parts of me, things that I thought I would take to my grave, secrets, all this kind of stuff. And on day 10, I remember sitting in the living room with this group of guys who all they knew about me was the worst parts of my life. They didn't know any cool things that I've ever done, anything that I would want to put on a resume to try to impress somebody. They knew none of that. All they knew literally was the worst parts of me. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, these guys want me in this room. They actually even love me. They were strangers 9 days ago and they love me and they know all of me. And it was the first time on earth I experienced, like, oh, I can be fully known and fully loved. I don't have to be impressive in order to be loved or valuable. And that led to me having a completely new relationship with my wife, no secrets, sharing every part of me with her. And I've kind of built in this practice over the last 2 years of, with a small group of people, not with everybody, but with a small group of people, figuring out what it looks like to be in real relationships where I'm known and loved. And that was like the real healing that I started to experience, is when I can get a glimpse of God's love for me through other people. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, that's super powerful. What did that experience teach you about like how you were going to raise your kids? I know you talked a little bit about your relationship with your wife, but what about fathering? How did that change your perspective on that?
You know what's funny, man, is uh, again, I have a 15-year-old all the way down to a 5-year-old, and so for the last 15 years, I've tried to figure out what it looks like to be a dad, especially, with having no experience with a dad growing up, right? So you know this, and I'm sure some of the guys listening know this. Like, you're trying to figure out, how do I model something that was never modeled for me? How do I practice something that was never shown to me? And that's kind of been the last 15 years. And so I'll read parenting books and listen to podcasts and blah, blah, blah. But what I've learned in the last 2 years is the greatest gift I could actually give my kids was me being healthy. um, Me going away and dealing with my own demons, my own secrets, my own sin, my own pain. All of that has translated into me being a better dad. And it's not like I'm like, I didn't learn any parenting strategies when I was in that intensive counseling. Like, they not one time did they were like, "Okay, so now when you go home with your kids, you need to do this." All it was me dealing with my own pain. And then I came home and I feel like I'm 100 times better of a dad than I was before I left. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, the greatest gift you can give your kids is for you to be a healed man, for you for you as a man to find your own wholeness. And if you just show up with your kids as a whole man, like, I feel like the margin for error, the grace bubble is so much bigger because your kids are getting to experience a healed and whole version of their dad.
Yeah, and one of the things that I know you talk about it in the book and also on your podcast a lot is like about being intentional with your kids. Are there things that you've put into practice that you've noticed like these are intentional things and they're actually paying off?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of little things. Like, I deleted all social media off my phone. I don't have any social media, and the biggest reason was just for my own spirit and soul. Like, in order for me to become whole, I wanted to not have that. But that also eliminates a ton of distractions. Like, there's nothing really distracting I can do on my phone, which gives my kids my attention. I think we show love through our kids and intentionality by giving them our eyes, right? Like, when my kids can actually see my eyes, and they know I have dad's full attention. There's just such a gift there. I try to, and speaking of intentionality, like, try to speak identity over my kids every opportunity I get. And a lot of this is a reaction to my childhood with an absence of a father. And so nobody was telling me, Jared, you're this. If anything, the world was telling me, like, I was getting bullied or whatever, so they were telling me I'm negative things. But I never had a man in my life say, "No, you're loved, you are delighted in, you're valuable, you're good at this," or whatever. And so what I try to do with my kids is be intentional about, like, speaking identity over them, because I know there's an enemy whispering lies into their ears all the time. So for my daughters, I might say something like, you're really kind. You're really empathetic. You're really thoughtful. You're really creative. Man, I can't believe God's so creative, and he must have put a bunch of creativity in you when he made you. You're really funny. Like, you bring light and joy to the world." So I'm just trying to speak like these. I'll literally use the words like, God used those ingredients when he made you, and I love that about you. And I'm just trying to help them form their identity so they don't go search for that in the world.
One of the quotes that I wrote down from your book that I wanted to ask you about is I'm just going to read it so I don't mess it up. It says, "We lead our kids toward the things that matter the most to us." And so I was curious, like how a man evaluates to make sure that he is leading them towards things that are actually good.
Yeah, I mean, you are we all are a sum of everything that we are consuming all day, every day. And when we get poked, whatever we're consuming just kind of bleeds out of us. It pours out of us. And so the TV shows I watch, the music I listen to, the things I read, the people I hang out with, all of this is just like filling the vessel. And when the vessel gets jostled a little bit, that spills out. And so your kids will pick up really quickly what you're passionate about. Like, it's you don't even have to tell them what you're passionate about. If you just had the courage to ask them, "Hey, what do you think I'm most passionate about?" They'll tell you. Like, they can sense it from you with your time and your money and the things you talk about. And so I just want to be a man who's most passionate about Jesus. Like, I want to be a man who spends time with the Lord, who's in God's word, who's going to church and in community with other like-minded people, so that when I get bumped, and by bumped I mean like there's a hard parenting moment, or I'm frustrated with my kids, or I'm frustrated with work, or somebody cuts me off on the freeway. All of these things, when I get bumped, what spills out is like a man who has been close to Jesus. And so my kids, and again, that's like the intentionality is me being close to the Lord, and they'll just pick up on it even more than if I said, okay, I'm going to read a devotional with my kids every day, which you should do, and which is great. But even more than that, the greater impact will be a dad who's actually close to the Lord and is trying to spend time with the Lord on his own, and your kids will like get the ramifications and the benefits of that.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to my next question because I know like even in the book you talk about like Deuteronomy 6 and making sure that we're like walking with our kids and talking with them and just like making sure that God is something that's like just in front of them at all the time. So what are some of the ways that you and your wife do that within your own household to like make sure that you're intentional about making sure that they know who God is?
I think everything it's recognizing that everything is spiritual. I think I talked about in that chapter, like I don't want my kids to think that daddy puts on a God hat or a Jesus hat. And that's when I kind of act spiritual. And then the rest of my life, I'm not. So that's one of the potential um, downsides if you have a set devotional time and that's the only time your kids hear you talk about Jesus. Again, do devotional times, they're wonderful. But if that's the only time your kids hear you talk about Jesus, it can be detrimental because then they'll start to compartmentalize their relationship with the Lord. And so what we do is like all of life, like, dude, we were just on a trip, a family trip last week, and where we were in a big city that had a lot of homeless people in it. And that there happened to be this kind of moment that scared my daughter with this mentally ill person. And so we're able to talk about like this is exactly who Jesus wants to be around. Like she was like, we need to get away. And I was like, baby, this is exactly the kind of people Jesus wants to be around, the sick, the poor, the needy. And so we don't run away from that kind of thing. Like we engage with that kind of thing because this is what our father's like. Or something like a sunset. Like I remember with my son, where I'm coaching a soccer team and there's just this outrageously beautiful sunset. And I pull him into my arm for like 12 seconds. I'm like, dude, look how creative God is. Isn't God so creative? Look at the way he painted the sky tonight. Like I'm just looking for every possible way to insert something about the kingdom of God because it's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. It's at the grocery store. It's while you're driving. It's while you're interacting with a homeless person. It's literally everywhere. And so I'm just trying to point out for my kids, the kingdom of God is all around you, and to kind of fix their eyes on that. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's one of the ways that we're trying to do that.
Yeah, and I've actually stolen one of your ideas. I know like on Instagram you posted that video of the daddy walk.
Hmm.
Um, I think that is also a time where I've tried to be intentional with them and kind of talk to them about God as well. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what a daddy walk is and how you can incorporate it into your life?
Yeah, I was just feeling like, especially with 4 kids, I'm trying to find one-on-one time with them. It can be complicated. It can feel hard where you're just like trying to survive the day and you didn't really get any good one-on-one time with any of your kids. And so I really wanted to figure out, is there a way for us to get one-on-one time that's actually sustainable? Um, and I just started taking them on walk, like 4 days out of the week. I would just take one of them on a walk. I have 4 kids, so each of those 4 days, one of them got to go on a walk, and it's literally just around the block with me. It's like a 15-minute walk around the block. Very simple. It costs no money. It takes very little planning, and what I was finding is my kids will just literally from my 15-year-old down to my 5-year-old, they'll just start talking a lot. Like you just go on a walk, there's no technology. And it can be as something as simple as there's a frog on the ground and your kids are just like my 5-year-old's just rattling off about that to my 15-year-old and my 13-year-old talking about some pain that they're experiencing in their friend groups. And what I also noticed is I didn't really even have to say much. Like literally just the practice of walking somehow stirred up something in them to get them talking. And so that's been one of the most like, if I'm feeling disconnected from my kids, we just go on a walk. It's one of the easiest, most practical, simple ways that I've found to connect with my kids.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is like when kids struggle with the same sin over and over and over again, what do you think is the proper way to talk to them about that and help them to see like this is an issue that you're struggling with? Here's how I can help you correct that.
Yeah, I mean, age appropriately, I start with a lot of empathy. I mean, hasn't that been our life? That we struggle with the same sin over and over and over again, and God's been so gracious to us. And so it's so funny, man, when you just like try to put on your empathy hat, which for us as dudes, it can be hard. Like empathy for guys doesn't always tend to be the strongest muscle, emotional muscle that we carry. But I've been really trying to grow in that. My wife has helped me. But I just look at my kids, and so my first gut reaction is frustration. But if I can get to empathy, I'm like, dude, that's me. Like I struggle with the same thing over and over and over again. And so literally saying that to them, like I know what it's like. I know what it's like to not be able to want to do something different and still continue to do the wrong thing. So I start with empathy. I Paul says that in the scriptures, like I want to do what's right and I don't do it. I know what's wrong and I do that, and so just pointing them out like this is a you thing. We're not trying to shame you. You're not the only one that's ever dealt with this. And then as much as I can try to get to the heart, like what do you really what is happening in your soul that you really want to be satisfied? That this behavior or this sin issue is trying to solve that but it's not able to. And really trying to get your kids to a spot in the same way I'm trying to do with myself. Like what's really going on in my heart here? This is a heart issue. This isn't just a behavior issue. And if I can help my kids see what's going on in their heart, not just their behavior, I think they have a better chance of addressing the root of the issue.
I'm one of those weird people that's like a big fan of talking about habits. Uh, I just like to know what other people do and like maybe steal stuff from them. So I'm curious in your life, are there any habits that you've put into place that you're like, okay, I've noticed a difference in my own life when I started doing this and how it's made me a better husband, it's made me a better father, and it's just made me a better man overall?
Well, a lot of mine are not quote unquote super spiritual, to be honest. I have a lot of like as I'm getting older, um, like physical habits that I have to disciplines that I have to start implementing in order to show up a little bit better. So like I have to work out every day, and I'm not like if you're looking at me on the screen, you're like, are you sure you work out, dude? Like it doesn't look like you work out. Like I'm not like this jack super fit dude, but I just physically I'm a better guy if I work out. And that goes with like I know again I'm not trying to be like the ultra healthy, like, go on some I'll eat a case of Oreos like no, but like, I'll be in a contest and beat you, with a case of Oreos. So, like, I'm not like the most healthy guy, but I have noticed when I take my sleep really seriously, when I take my physical health really seriously, I show up better for my family. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. Like if God told me to love his bride the way that he loves the church and he called me to lead my family well, one of the ways that I do that best is actually showing up with the healthiest version of me. So some of that is a lot of that is the internal, like my spiritual self, my soul is my pain being addressed, my sin being addressed. But another big part of that is like, am I physically, do I have habits of working out every day? Going on a walk, I try to hit like 10,000 steps every day. I sauna quite consistently. I know that sounds like weird and stuff, but I bought a sauna and like try to sauna consistently because that
That's
helps
cool.
me feel better. Um, yeah, so none of these are like profound or super life changing, but they seem to make me a better help man.
No, I just like to know because I feel like I've tried to start instituting the 10,000 step thing. And I mean, I've been only doing it for like 2 months or something like that, but I feel like even like my mind is so much clearer when I try
100%,
to
man.
do things now because it's like, oh, you've gotten your steps in. And it's like, even being in nature, I feel like to do some of those steps, it helps clear my mind, but I also feel like it helps bring me closer to God too, which is an added benefit to taking
Dude, those
things.
those 2 things alone, if guys did those, you would feel massive shift. Like, it's crazy. If you could get any kind of device that's tracking your steps, you'd be amazed at, like, if you're not trying how hard it is to hit steps, you're probably in the very low thousands, normal person, and, um, and just by making that change, you'll feel way better. And I would say too, like, practicing silence, getting in spaces, having intentional spaces where you don't do anything, no music, podcast, no screens, nothing. Just sit in silence and allow the Lord to speak to you in that. I think it's pretty profound. That's been the sauna for me, honestly. It's just like 20 minutes of pure silence.
Yeah, and I mean, for the silence, that's something that I've tried to institute as well, but that kinda requires me waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I think sometimes that's the hard part for guys is, like, to do this and do it well, you have to make some kinda sacrifice, and waking up at 5 a.m. is a sacrifice, but, That's the only time sometimes when you're a dad that your house is actually quiet. So
Do you have young kids? Is that why that's the only time?
my wife and I have 5 kids and she's pregnant currently. So
Holy moly, dude.
yeah.
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 You need to be the one writing books, bro.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I would say start with 1 minute. Start with 1 minute of silence. When I came back from the intensive therapy, I would do several 1 minutes of silence a day. And it's different than like if I'm just sitting for 1 minute, um, unintentionally silent, it's different than an intentional minute of silent. Like if I purposely set a timer and I just close my eyes and like just breathe quietly for 1 minute, that the it's crazy how much that feels like you just got like a mental massage. Like it's a very I don't know, it's hard to explain, but try to do 1 minute a day. If you feel like you can't do 20 minutes, just do 1 minute. Start there and I bet you'll feel better.
So one thing that I like to ask everybody is like when you get to the end of your life and then, when you're gone and you're with Jesus, what do you hope that your kids remember about you and just your legacy overall as a dad?
You know what's funny, man? As I had this weird thought, I was driving. I don't know where I was driving the other day, and I was thinking about my dad. And my dad is an entrepreneur. He's kind of a go getter. He wants to accomplish. Even in his late 70s now, he's still trying to figure out what kinds of things he wants to accomplish. And I remember thinking this was just the other day as I was driving. I was like, if he didn't accomplish anything, but he was just fully present in my life, if he decided to stay and just literally be around um, that would mean more to me than anything he could accomplish in life. And I really felt that for whatever reason, like that thought like hit me in a really deep place. I'm like, dude, that would have meant so much to me if literally the most simple thing if he would have just stuck around. And it was convicting to me because I'm kind of a go getter and I like to do stuff and accomplish things and run after the next thing. And I was thinking, what to answer your question, what I really want is just that my kids were like, "My dad just stuck around. Like, he was just around me," you know? And if my wife can say that, like, my husband stuck around and he was faithful to me and he was present, and my kids can say my dad was more than he cared about all the things he was trying to accomplish in life, he just was around and he was with us, I'll feel like I ran my race really well. My counselor, when I did that intensive therapy, they asked me, "What did you want from your dad? Like, what did you not get from your dad that you really feel like you needed as a little boy?" And for some reason, when they asked me that question, it, like, poked a nerve, and I just started weeping. And I was really trying to rack my brain, like, what did I need? And all I could think of, dude, all I could think of was my dad sitting on a couch with me. For some reason, even me saying this right now, I feel like I could start crying. It feels
Yeah.
weird.
I'm right
Yeah.
there with you.
Yeah. All I needed from my dad was to sit on the couch with me and put his arm around me. Like, that's all I could think of in the moment. For some reason, that 6-year-old Jared, what I really felt like I needed from my dad was that he just sat with me and put his arm around me. And I think that what I was telling myself as a 6-year-old boy, was like, I just needed to feel safe with my dad. Like he was with me and I'm safe with him. And so that's, dude, I want my kids to say that. Like my dad was around and he made me feel safe.
So for the guys that have listened to this conversation and they're like, man, I like that Jared guy. I want to know more about him and what he does. Where can they find out more about your work and what you do?
I appreciate that, man. For the 2 guys maybe that are saying that, um, I have a podcast called Dad Tired, and we have like 550 episodes. So we've been doing it for 10 years, and so would love to have you listen to that. We've written some books, and we do 1-day conferences all over the country. If one might be in your area, I would love to meet you in person. I have some public social media accounts, but I'm not on social media anymore. So if you send a message there, my wife will probably see it, so you could say hi to me through her. But yeah, would love to maybe see you at a conference or have you listen to the podcast or something.
All right. Well, Jared, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, I'm really grateful for the conversation, for the invite.
Thanks for listening to this episode. You can find out more about us by going to our website, noblepursuit.org, or by following us on Instagram at noblepursuitmen. You can find out more information about today's guest by looking in the description below.